Hello everyone and thanks for watching Edupedia World Videos. I am Vibhuti Parekh and today we are going to discuss regarding demographic environments. So what do you think is the demographic environment? As per Peter Drucker, emphasis the tremendous economic and business implications of demographic changes suggest that any strategy, that is any commitment of present resources to future expectation, has to start out with demographics. Demographic factors such as size of the population, population growth rates, age composition, ethnic composition, destiny, density of population, rural, urban distribution, family size, nature of the family, income levels, etc. have very significant implications for business. First of all, we'll discuss in detail the population size. The size of the population is actually an important determinant of demand for many products. There are countries with less than a lakh of people on one hand and those with thousands of millions on the other hand. Poor countries with small population are generally not attractive for business. However, even such countries may hold out opportunities for some companies, as these markets may not be of interest for large companies. Small firms may find promising niches in these markets. Advanced countries, particularly with large population, are generally attractive markets. The major part of the international trade and foreign investments naturally take place between these nations. Because of the large potential of these markets, competition is generally very strong in them. Thus, we can say that the small companies cannot face the competition and thus they prefer the markets with small population. Next, we'll discuss the falling birth rate and changing age structure. It is very true that there has been an explosive growth of the global population, particularly in the developing countries. The universal trend now, however, is fall in birth rates. Although the total population is still growing at over 1% annually. Developing countries are also experiencing significant decline in the population growth rates. In developing countries, the fall in the birth rate is so steep that the population size would shrink drastically in future. Because of the declining birth rate, population is already peaking in a number of countries. The fall in birth rate and the collapse of population size has serious implications for business. The decline birth rate possesses a problem for many businesses. Because of the decline in the birth rate and the consequent fall in the size of the baby population, the market for baby products has shrunk. This has prompted some companies such as Johnson & Johnson to reposition their products which were originally baby products and to pay more importance to international business. The decline birth rate has, however, been a boon to certain industries. For example, industries such as hotels, airlines, and restaurants have benefited from the fact that young childless couples have more time and income for travel and dining out. Small families have also similar advantages when compared with large families. It is obvious that business should necessarily ponder over whether the falling birth rate and the shrinkage in the number of young people and especially of people under 18, that is babies, children and teenagers, is a threat or an opportunity. As Drucker points out, for a business that makes its living making goods for small children, the collapsing birth rate may be an opportunity. It is conceivable that having fewer children means that the child becomes more and more precious to his parents and that a large share of the disposable income is spent on it. This apparently has already happened in China, where a majority of families have only one child. Many families there, despite their poverty, apparently spend more on a single child than they used to spend on 3 or 4 children. There are signs in other countries like Germany, Italy, and even US of similar developments. Although birth rate have fallen in developing countries, the population growth are still very high. This, coupled with a steady increase in income, drives fast the growth of the market of number of developing economies. When the population is very large, even if the country is generally poor, there could be a sizable market even for those goods and services which are regarded luxury in these countries. For example, if just 5% of Indian population is well-to-do, the absolute number is larger than the total population of many of the high-income economies. High population growth rate also implies an enormous increase in the labor supply. When the Western countries experienced industrial revolution, the population growth was comparatively very slow. Labor shortage and rising wages encouraged the growth of labor-intensive methods of production. Capital-intensive technologies, automation, and even rationalization are opposed by labor and many sociologists, politicians, and economists in developing countries. Cheap labor and a growing market has encouraged many multinationals to invest in developing countries. Many companies in the developed countries have relocated their production facilities wholly or partially in the developing countries to reduce the labor cost. The problems of developing countries due to the population explosion also indicate the enormous scope of several industries. A very significant share of the Indian population is below the poverty line. Although these people who do not have sufficient income even to meet the bare minimum basic necessities of life do not come within the market for the large variety of goods and services. The existence of such a large size of poor population has a lot of other implications. To solve the basic problems, the additional number of children to be educated, the additional number of people to be provided with medical care, water supply, etc. during one 5-year plan in India are more than what most nations have done over centuries. While it is a formidable national challenge, it also indicates enormous business opportunities. The occupational and spatial mobilities of population too have many implications for business. If labor is very mobile between regions and occupations, labor problems are likely to be less than would otherwise be the case. In the labor of a country where it is highly heterogeneous in respect of language, religion and caste, ethnicity, etc., personal management is likely to become a more complex task. A highly heterogeneous population with its varied taste, preference, beliefs, temperaments, etc. give rise to differing demand patterns and cause for differing marketing strategies. The falling birth rate and rising longevity will significantly alter the age distribution between the population. The proportion of aged in the total population will go up. For example, for those 20 odd million Italians by the year 2080, a very small number will be under 15, and a very large number, at least one-third of the population, will be above 60. In Japan, the disproportion between younger people and people above any traditional retirement age will be equally great, if not greater. Whereas in United States, the young population is already growing much more slowly than the older population, past traditional retirement. Still, up to the year 2015 or so, the number of young people will still be growing in absolute numbers in United States, but then it is likely to go down and quite rapidly. The share of old in the total population will increase in future in almost each and every nation. The changes in the age distribution have a lot of implications for business. Several pharmaceutical companies, for instance, are paying a lot of attention to the potential requirement of the aged population. According to Drucker, the collapsing birth rate will have the following implications. First one, for the next 20 or 30 years, demographics will dominate the politics of all developed countries, and they will inevitably be politics of great turbulence. Important issues include the retirement age and immigration. Secondly, for the next 20 to 30 years, no developed country is likely, therefore, to have any stable politics or a strong government. Government instability is going to be the norm. Thirdly, retirement may come to mean two different things. It is quite likely that the trend towards early retirement will continue, but it will no longer mean that a person stops working. It will come to mean that a person stops working full time or as an employee for an organization or the entire year rather than few months at a time. Lastly, the final implication is that in all developed countries, the productivity of all workers, whether full time or part time, and especially of all knowledge workers, will have to increase very rapidly. Otherwise, the country and every organization in it will lose position and become steadily poorer. Next, we'll discuss migration and ethnic. Next, we will discuss migration and ethnic aspects. While the population will be declining in many developed countries, which may also lead to labor shortage, population pressure will be mounting in developing nations. As a consequence, to prevent migration pressure, as Drucker observes, is like preventing the law of gravity. The demographic trends have caused significant changes in the attitude and policy of nations towards immigration. The trends in the fertility and death rates indicate that in developed countries, death would exceed births over the foreseeable future, leading to a decline in the population if not counterbalanced by a net migration gain. The more developed regions are expected to receive large net migration over the century. During 2010 to 2050, the net number of international migrants to more developed regions is projected to be 87 millions, whereas the excess of death over births is 11 million, implying an overall growth of 76 millions. During 2050 to 2100, the net number of international migrants to more developed regions is projected to be 49 millions, whereas the excess of deaths over birth is 24 million, indicating an overall growth of 25 millions. Thus, but for the net migration from developing to developed countries, their population would be declined to 1.11 billion. However, the population of the more developed regions is expected to change minimally, passing from 1.24 billion in 2011 to 1.34 billion in 2100, thanks to the net migration from developing countries, which is projected to average 2.2 million persons annually from 2011 to 2050 and 0.8 million from 2050 to 2100. The impact of migration is preventing a decline in population is already evident in the case of number of countries. In 2005-2010, net migration in three countries or areas, which is Italy, Portugal and Japan, more than doubled the contribution to natural increase of population growth. In addition, in a further 29 countries or areas, net migration counterbalanced totally the excess of death over births. In terms of annual averages, the major net receiver of international migrants during 2010-50 are projected to be the United States, Canada, Spain, Italy, and the United Kingdom. The major countries of net immigration are projected to be China, India, Mexico, Pakistan, Indonesia, Philippines, and Bangladesh. During 2050 to 2100, the major net receivers of international migrants are projected to be the United States, Italy, and Canada, whereas the major net sender are projected to be China, India, Pakistan, the Philippines, and Bangladesh. Already immigration has brought about very remarkable ethnic changes in countries like USA. A number of localities are concentrated by immigrants communities. Miami used to be thought of as Cuban enclave but later became more Haitian, more Jamaican, more all sorts of things. The mayor of Miami observed that his region has home to 156 nationalities. Silicon Valley is merely the latest American showpiece to be built in large part of immigrants. The US has been receiving very large number of migrants. The fertility rate are comparatively high among the migrants. The increase in the number and diversity of the migrants increase the multicultural complexity, throwing up new challenges and opportunities for marketing. The good old dictum, be a Rome when in the good old dictum, be a Roman when in Rome hardly happens. Although the US was originally called a melting pot, immigrants have been found to retain their identity rather than melting. As Kotler observes, now the US is called a salad bowl society with ethnic groups maintaining their ethnic differences, neighborhoods, and culture. Each specific group has certain specific wants and buying habits. Several food, clothing, and furniture companies in the US have directed their products to one or more of these groups. For example, Sears is taking note of the preference of the different ethnic groups. Colgate-Palmolive has successfully promoted its toothpastes within the Hispanic community through ads that place less emphasis on health and more emphasis on appearances. Marketers must, however, be careful not to overgeneralize about ethnic groups because within each ethnic group, consumers who are different from each other exists. Thank you for this part. In next, we'll discuss further regarding the social and cultural environments.